All right, welcome everyone to wasmCloud Wednesday for July 6th. We usually get started with a demo, but today we have something just as exciting, and I'll hand it off to Taylor to talk about it.
Thanks, Brooks. So let's go ahead and talk about some exciting things of governance. Woohoo! Okay, no, but honestly, this is it's more than just that. I want to show kind of what we're planning on doing, um, and then it'll give people the chance to kind of answer or like look at things and answer any and ask any questions they might have. So we for a while have been kind of just going forward with the project. We've had lots of people from the community contribute, but we haven't had a clear way for people to become contributors. So to that end, we wanted to make sure we kind of laid out at least a basic framework. These documents are not meant to add a ton of process or anything. We don't need that at this point, but it's just meant to add a basic framework and also kind of a common point of understanding for everybody to use. As I state here, which you may not have seen in that conversation, these are heavily influenced from the governance and contributing docs of Helm and Porter. I helped write the first draft of Helm, so there's a large chunk of those that are still things that I wrote, and I figured I didn't want to rewrite it because all humans are lazy. And then also, I really loved what Porter did for their contributor ladder. So what we've done is put those all together. We've completely revamped our contributing documents, and we've also added a contribution ladder or a contributor ladder. It's called this because it's kind of like the rungs you follow to be able to become a maintainer of a wasmCloud project. So there's three different kinds. There's a community member, which pretty much everyone's a community member. So those are different things that you can do and kind of give some suggestions of how to start getting involved in the community. After that, we get to an actual contributor level, which is someone who does the basic like triaging of issues and PRs. That they're able to contribute code and have issues and things that like directly assigned to them. They can apply different labels and things. They can and they just help kind of that basic triaging stuff. It's kind of the precursor to becoming a project maintainer. And a project maintainer is someone who is over one or more different projects inside the wasmCloud space. So that could be if you're interested in capability providers and you help write a lot of capability providers and update the ones we have, then perhaps becoming a maintainer of the capability provider project would be good for you. Some people might want to work on the host. Some people might want to work on the interfaces. It just depends. And so that's what we have is we have a project maintainer. And then after that, we have an org maintainer, and they're ones that have responsibilities for maintaining the whole direction of the wasmCloud project. We also point out here that some maintainers might not be code-based maintainers. Some people might be more along the lines of like community management. If that's your type of thing and you like doing it, please let us know. We love to try to enable those people to contribute in the way they'd like to contribute as well. So this is going to be a nice thing for people to be able to follow and know exactly how you can become a maintainer rather than just going, well, do I just kind of contribute stuff or whatever? It gives us some specific steps that you can follow to be able to become a maintainer. So we've added that in there. And like I said, we've also added the contributing thing. This has the full detailed thing of how we contribute stuff, how we handle issues, what tags labels that we have. It actually even explicitly describes all common labels across different repositories, just to make sure we have a set standard for how things work. There's also the governance side of all this, and one of them is the whole idea of a security document. This is the thing we've been following before. We've already done this once with a security issue we found on the wasmCloud host. But we have created a whole list of how we do security reports. We have an initial list that I just put together. If you are another maintainer who's on this call and is involved in the organization, would like to be on there, let us know. These are always made up of project maintainers or org maintainers. And so this just shows exactly how we acknowledge vulnerabilities, how we report them, how they're sent out. And obviously this can continue to be improved as the project grows and more people use it. So if we get to a future in 2 or 3 years when there's multiple big companies who are trying to use things from wasmCloud, then for example, we'll probably have an early like disclosure list, those kind of things that you'd normally have. We don't have that yet. We just are trying to keep a bare minimum. And the governance explains just the very basic levels of like how do we run the project? So it talks about the contributor ladder. It talks very specifically about org maintainers and how we vote on specific things, and also how project level maintainers can vote, as well as licenses that we use. So it's just a very basic structure meant to kind of codify exactly what we've already been doing, and add a few other things that just kind of help keep everything organized based on things I've experienced in the past. But I am by far the only person who has worked extensively in open source. So the reason this is open as a PR is so that the community has sufficient time to go in and make sure that everything looks okay. If there's something that concerns you or something that needs to be addressed, we want to make sure these things are covered inside of this PR. And then once this is adopted, we'll start following its processes. So we'll come with basically the initial list of org maintainers, and then make sure there's project maintainers that are specified out there, and then having a nice like structure in place to follow as we go forward. So that is what this does. I mean, it can be considered boring, I get it, but also it's a critical part, and shows the maturity of the project, especially as we continue to move forward into probably incubating in the CNCF and other things along those lines, because we want to make sure that people know how they can contribute and follow those kind of procedures. So that's all I have. I will turn over any questions to the floor. There's surprisingly no questions in chat, which means most people probably considered it boring, which is totally fine. Yes, Brooks. I mean, audience plant. I mean,
I have a good question for myself, actually. So, I've seen over the course of the wasmCloud project that there are people that are contributors now who I feel like would be good at good candidates for project maintainers, people to outside of the core team as we're doing this and expanding, who would work well on the higher up the ladder. What's the process that you've seen before, Taylor? Is it more the onus on the org maintainers, the people who are on the project, to reach out to people to I know that there are some things here, but just wanted to be clear there. Is this the let me Google that for you treatment?
Yeah, this is the let me Google that for you treatment. So this is explicitly stated in the contribution ladder. The idea is that we do watch out for people who do it. I'm going to be fully and completely transparent here. If we merge this, for example, as is, people who are already contributing and doing things to wasmCloud, there's no process to follow. We're just going to reach out to you and say, hey, you were already kind of a contributor. Do you want to officially become a contributor under this new system? And boom, add you as a contributor. There's not going to be anything official. No one's starting from scratch or anything. We're just going, the first step is done by fiat. We just say, here are the org maintainers. We're not holding a vote. We're not doing anything. This is who it appears to be, and then we start from there. We're a new project. We don't have to make this super fancy. We don't have to have a bootstrapping vote, or we don't have to have the 13 states ratify the Constitution. Sorry for the U.S. specific joke, but we don't have to do anything super fancy. We're just going to go start doing this. Take the best guess of the people who are out in the community, especially, and if you're oh, I was already planning on helping maintain the capability providers or something, then please let us know, just in case we miss you. We're not trying to miss anybody. We're just trying to start something and go from there. So yes, we do keep an eye out, though. That's generally how this works. Though, we say, if you are on this call and you're oh, I've wanted to contribute and I've only been doing some small things, reach out to us. We're going to say, oh, that's great, and kind of coach you through the whole thing. We don't want to make it hard on anyone. But yes, the maintainers and contributors of any of the projects should keep an eye out for people that are contributing regularly and might want to join as an actual contributor or maintainer. Stunned silence. Okay, so if anyone has any questions or comments, please drop it on there. I prefer to keep these open for a week or two because it's a big change, and I want to make sure people have time to see that this is happening. So probably my personal feel on this is we should wait until one more wasmCloud meeting next week, give people the reminder that this is there, and then by the end of the week, merge it. So that gives people basically a week and a half to look at this. if we feel like we haven't gotten enough feedback or things from people, we can also extend it a little bit further, because you can generally go, if you look at the actual governance document, we say that a lot of things are done like within 3 weeks for like a big decision, like adopting a new org maintainer or something like that. So, but generally week and a half, given the size of our project, is probably good enough. So that's kind of the next steps here.
Solid work, Taylor. I know that was a lot of work, and I really appreciate the all the attention you put into this. You know, this is there's the level to go from sandbox to incubation is the biggest leap in the CNCF, and you know, this is certainly one of the rungs on the ladder that we need to cross. So I really appreciate all the effort on this.
And with that, I throw things back on Brooks.
Alrighty, yeah, thank you, Taylor. I actually I don't have a demo for today. Does anybody have something fun, something cool that they did with wasmCloud that they wanted to show off? We kind of have some extra time in the demo section. All right, thought I would give some time there for an open floor. There are a couple of things from the wasmCloud perspective I'd love to talk about now. Oh, hey, Taylor, demo?
No, not a demo. I just remembered something I wanted to point out. I'm pretty sure Liam can correct me if I'm wrong here, but the CFP is open for the next Cloud Native WASM Day in Detroit. So that is very applicable to this audience. Even if it's not wasmCloud related, just please submit to that. We love having this. Last one was really cool to see the whole different use cases that were out there for everybody. And so we're obviously going to be there. Actually, currently, most of the people who work at Cosmonic are all planning on being there. So that's a good chunk of the core team is going to be there. So if you want to just like chat about anything wasmCloud related, that'd be great. If people are going to be at this next KubeCon, please let us know. We'd love to set up either like a bourbon tasting like we've done before in the community, or a like hack session where we all get together and hack on some ideas or try out something new. We love any of those types of things. So I just remembered that we wanted to point that out, that this is open, and please let us know if you are interested in maybe getting together for an event, if people are going to be there. If we get, even if we have like 3 to 5 people there who all want to talk wasmCloud, plus the wasmCloud maintainers who are there, I mean, that's enough to have a really fun like place. We can reserve a room somewhere and be able to hack and do whatever we'd like, and just talk about cool things we're doing with WebAssembly. So please let us know if you're interested in that, and please do go submit talks, even if we're not saying just if they're wasmCloud related. Anything WASM, please go submit to this Cloud Native WASM Day. This day has been really, really fun. And after having attended some other days at other conferences recently, like I can tell you, this one is still one of the most interesting and enjoyable out there. It's kind of like having our own conference, and it's just been, the content is very high quality. So I highly recommend submitting to this, and definitely recommend going to it. It's very worth any money you'll spend on it. So just pointing that out.
Yeah, and please feel free, if you're thinking about writing a proposal for the first time and not really sure where to start or anything. Some of the people on the core team here are very experienced at giving talks at conferences. So I'm going to go ahead and sign you up, Taylor. But Taylor really helped when for all of the CFPs that I've written for conferences, and it's been super helpful. So, you know, even if you're wondering if your use case is exciting enough for this, it is, and you should submit.
I'll just add in, you know, in past conferences, you know, we, you know, are willing to invest a lot of time with you one-on-one. If there's topics that you want to develop for the conference, we really try to balance, diversity in content and diversity in speakers, prioritize new speakers, and prioritize new topics. So the WebAssembly community is, a total reboot on cloud native. So there's, I think, openings across the board here for every topic. I mean, best practices, real world use cases, developer tooling, languages, you name it, the topics are completely wide open. So if you have something you're interested in, we have a lot of spots to fill, and the topics range from, lightning talk, regular talk, to maybe even training or demonstration sessions. So please feel free, if you have thoughts or ideas, just drop me a note or one of the other team members a note, and we'll happily collaborate with you to make something happen. You can hear all the kids in the background screaming. I'm sorry, I have no idea what just happened. Somebody apparently I think my cousins just arrived at the house, and all the kids, there's like now 9 kids here, are all just saw each other, and they go full Muppet when that happens.
It's either that or talking about WASM Day. It could be either one of those things.
Either one, Brooks.
Yeah, great call, Taylor, to bring this one up. Taylor's gotten me to click links in community calls before. I think I'm gonna abstain. You never know. All right, fine.
It's worth the click. Honestly, the related gifts down the side just sell the whole story, because you get like the whole audience there. It's like we got the pan and zoom.
Yeah, thank you, Taylor. Definitely go up, submit proposals. I had a couple of things from the wasmCloud side. We did publish another blog post last week. You can find this at wasmcloud.com/blog. The one on distributed WebAssembly applications. This is essentially a setup guide for NATS and NGS, and it takes you from installing wasmCloud on your local machine to running an application. Here's a little diagram that I like to show. But running an application across your local, on another cloud, or on an edge, what have you, it's just easily connected with NGS. So would highly recommend, if you are interested in how to get that set up, you check out the blog. This was I wrote this one. This is one of my favorite ones to write. This is what powers a lot of the magic of our recent demos. And it's just really, it's really exciting to get this out there, because it's not magic, and it doesn't require hours and hours of infrastructure setup or anything like that, which is really cool. So hopefully you all get to try it. And I guess if you have any good feedback, let me know. If you have any hard feedback or trouble setting it up, I can send you the link to the NAT Slack. I'm just kidding. Also tell me if you have any trouble setting it up.
Hey, Brooks, I got a chance to read that, and it was really helpful. Thanks for putting that together.
Thanks, John. Yeah, glad to know. All right. So I wanted to mention the most recent blog. It's always fun to talk about the blogs that we're putting out. I also, and great timing, Kevin just came in here. I wanted to bring up this PR into wadm. We've talked about wadm intermittently over community calls, and in the last one, we actually demoed, or Kevin demoed the initial functionality for deploying and undeploying an application. This is really the way that we're going to do declarative application management with wasmCloud. Kevin, did you want to talk about this first PR that you put out a little earlier, either today or this week?
Yeah, sure. Like it says, it's basically the initial implementation of doing declarative deployment. So if you're using the absolute latest version of Wash, which hasn't yet been merged, I've got some changes in the PR, still waiting for that one, then you'll be able to do things like submit a YAML file for a declarative application, and you'll be able to do things like issue deploy commands and undeploy. And when you deploy, the autonomous agent will monitor the state of a given lattice, and if it detects divergence between what your spec says and what the lattice has, it will make lattice controller calls in order to fix that. So the ultimate goal is, sort of fire and forget declarative deployments, where you just describe what you want, and the combination of wadm and wasmCloud hosts will take care of that. The only real sort of warning that I would have is that this is the first implementation. So it's definitely still experimental. There's no, I wouldn't recommend using it for anything that needs, guarantees of no bugs, things like that. This is all still basically just getting something checked in so that we can start iterating on it, because up until this point, too much of this stuff has just been in my head. So, now that it's out there, we can start churning on it and making iterative improvements.
Kevin, questions and comments, I suppose. I see that the 2 lattice control command stuff is in there, which is great, because that was a part that I wasn't entirely sure how we're going to implement. With the original, I guess, idea of actually happening or using the Kubernetes operator to do this, how do we want to provide feedback to it? And I would assume at this point in time, because the reconciliation actually occurs in wadm, that the operator will just be something that reflects status, as opposed to try to reconcile anything or send any commands down except for the initial file. But I'm not clear on like what we want to do for status. And I know Taylor has lots of experience here as well.
So yeah, if there's a couple of things that I think are kind of hard and fast rules. If a Kubernetes operator was to take advantage of wadm under the hood, the operator itself would not be responsible for reconciliation. wadm should be the only thing that does reconciliation. Right now, you would probably be able to maintain some really, really high level state. As we keep iterating on wadm, inside the PR, you'll actually see there's a comment that the state machine that we're using is not fine-grained enough. We're not modeling enough states. So that will eventually get better, and scheduled for this week or sometime early next. I'm also going to put in some stuff in wadm where we're emitting events every time wadm takes an action. And then, a Kubernetes operator could then listen for those events as well. But the design goal for wadm isn't to support Kubernetes. It's to be usable by some other tool. So you can certainly use it from a Kubernetes operator, but wadm is predominantly designed to be stood up in a wasmCloud infrastructure and operated via wash.
Taylor, you got a couple more comments on the same kind of Kubernetes question?
Yeah, I was just saying I think Kevin answered most like the super technical details for Janitha, but I would just also point out that like if you're using the Kubernetes applier stuff that we created to connect into like wasmCloud, so if you that could be a use case for something where you want to do a controller of some kind, I would think, Janitha. And in that case, like all the orchestration for the wasmCloud side would need to be done by wadm, like Kevin was saying. but the controller could be the kind of shim to forward it into there. So you want to like define something. You could either have like a mixed definition that could spin up some things that are pods that are old things that still run in containers, and new things that run in wadm. You could do some sort of connection layer there as well. But with the service applier, you would make it so that anything that came up that was spinning up an HTTP server would automatically have something spun up on the other end to connect like back to the new wasmCloud stuff. So there are tools there that can be used for it, but definitely I agree with Kevin. The orchestration part of it would probably want to be handled by all by wadm itself, rather than like the controller trying to spread things out. Though there's nothing stopping a controller from doing that. It'd just be reinventing what wadm is already doing.
Yeah, that said, I think I obviously haven't played with this yet, but one thing that might be possible is a Kubernetes operator could start wadm in a Docker image inside a Kubernetes cluster, and then wadm itself would then be able to manage the wasmCloud resources.
I guess in my head, I know sorry, Taylor, you did the Kubernetes applier stuff some time ago, and I think initially, like a long time ago, with some of the guys from Red Badger, we came up with an operator as well, just to ship the OEM spec down through NATS in, and I haven't actually diffed the two. So I guess the question is, what do we want to do, or what should we do? And then, yeah, the wadm inside of Kubernetes, yes. I think that would, well, actually, wouldn't that be a vanilla deployment? I'm not sure.
Like, is that the same? I guess I'm trying to understand the question. So you're saying, like, are you saying wouldn't a deployment handle this, or I'm just making sure I understand before I try to answer?
Well, I'm actually trying to stitch everything together as well, I think, okay. Out loud. So I know Taylor, you worked on the Kubernetes applier stuff, and then there was another operator that was created from the Red Badger people and myself that was also going to ship the OEM spec across NATS to whatever. And that's how wadm actually came about, and that was going to be the original receiver was wadm. And then Kevin also mentioned actually running wadm inside of Kubernetes as well. So I'm trying to, I guess, dissect all three.
Yeah, those are not mutually exclusive possibilities. So your original comment about shipping YAML over NATS, that is actually that's how wadm gets its control stuff now. So if you look at, again, this hasn't been merged yet, but if you look at the code in Wash for the app subcommand, you'll see how it talks to wadm, and wadm has a control API that you can interact with directly if you don't want to use the Wash library stuff. And then I only mentioned using Kubernetes as a way of starting wadm, because wadm is another Elixir application. It's not a collection of actors. So it still needs to be scheduled by an operating system or some other scheduler.
Brooks, go ahead. I raised my hand after you.
Okay. I was going to let you go, but I just wanted to nail one thing home that I was thinking about. I know that there's going to be a lot of overlap when we start thinking about the way that Kubernetes does declarative deployments and how wadm is going to handle declarative deployments for a wasmCloud application. And they're going to be handled in similar but different ways. Sorry about that. I got something. But one main reason why why we didn't implement this as like a Kubernetes operator is mostly because we don't want to be dependent on Kubernetes. Like to have the jump from, hey, I want to deploy a declarative application with wasmCloud, to have to tell people now you need to introduce Kubernetes is something that we didn't want to go to. So I just wanted to point that out. But then of course you can deploy wadm on Kubernetes. We're going with the compatible with but not dependent upon mentality that we've been sticking with.
Okay, Brooks, was that it? I didn't, your hand still raised. I didn't want to interrupt you if you were still going to say something.
No.
Yeah, so just something I'm going to point out here, and I don't mean this to say like as something discouraging, but the thing is for many of us in the WebAssembly community, WebAssembly is the future, but we know that we're not, like, people aren't just going to go yeet all their code out the window and go write everything for wasmCloud or any of the other WASM things that are going on. Like, that would be stupid if we expected that. And so the idea behind what we're trying to do with the things like Kubernetes applier and anything that would be any controller that someone would create for Kubernetes would be purposely for creating what I personally term the bridge to the future. Kubernetes is not going to be the primary way people should run wasmCloud to get the full benefits. Now that doesn't mean, like, that's not saying no one should run it. Like, that's exactly why we offer a chart, because people want to try it out now and they want to be able to connect to what the future is, hence the bridge to the future, through the stuff they already have, which is Kubernetes. So we've come to meet people where they're at with those technologies. But wasmCloud is never going to be a deeply integrated into Kubernetes kind of thing. That's not where any of us as core maintainers. Now, I could be wrong. If any core maintainer on here is differently minded than me, please tell people. But as far as I understand, all the core maintainers of this project are very much in the, we're not going to go try to integrate super deeply with Kubernetes and make this a Kubernetes CRD dependent thing. In fact, most of us, and this one I'll speak just for myself, I greatly dislike CRDs. I think they were a terrible idea for 80 to 90% of the use cases they're used for. But even if my opinion is totally wrong, that's not the way that we see wasmCloud going in the future. And so there's no need, what we don't want to do, and what would be very bad for us as a project and for WebAssembly in general, is to tie our chain to the Kubernetes boat. And no matter what happens to the Kubernetes boat, it could keep floating for 40 years, or it could sink in 5 years. We don't know. But instead of tying it to that, we're setting out to build a new future. But at the same time, to overstress the analogy here, we're putting out a plank in between the two boats so people can still do stuff across the boats, but we don't want to completely tie it in there. And like Brooks said, Brooks brought up a very good point. We're trying not to re-implement Kubernetes. Like, Kubernetes does things very well. It offers a very good set of building blocks that are very good for building platforms with. But there's been so much baggage and shark jumping that is been added onto it that sometimes drags things down with it. And so I don't think we're ever going to get to the place that maybe you're envisioning based on what I understand, Janitha, but we want to make it as easy as possible to connect with the things you have. People have invested millions and billions of dollars across the world getting things onto Kubernetes. And that was a huge step for people. It got a lot of people out of like running VMs in their own data centers to running things in the cloud. And so that's a very important evolutionary step. But we also think that the future of this is going to be, a future of a lot of these things is going to be WebAssembly based. And so, sorry for the long rant, but I really wanted to explain, like, we're not trying to like poo-poo on the idea here. What we're trying to do is just explain that wadm enables some really cool things, but it's meant for WebAssembly. And if you need to tie that into what you have, we're all for helping you make sure that, like, if you have questions or anything integrated in, we want to help you with that. We want to make it easy to do it. But we're never going to come back and fully make wasmCloud a first-class Kubernetes citizen installable by CRD. That's just a step too far and too limiting for what we're trying to do. So hopefully that explains a little bit more. And if anyone else on here is like, no, I do not agree with what Taylor said, that's perfectly fine. Please say it. But I just wanted to very clearly but nicely specify why we're doing the things we're doing and what we are trying to avoid.
So Jennifer, I know you had some specific questions about Kubernetes and wadm. Did that kind of delineate where we are at and answer your questions there?
Yeah, I need to look through the code, and I just found the stuff for the Kubernetes applier just now. But I think that I completely understand and agree with what has been said so far. My understanding was that the reason that we came up with what is currently in wasmCloud for the title K8s operator was a way to just ship the OAM spec from left to right, nothing implemented inside. So whatever's running runs in wasmCloud and in OTP, but it was just a way to get the kubectl command to be compliant, to provide a playing field, if you like, that's familiar to what Taylor is pointing out to the people who actually using Kubernetes, not really try to run anything anywhere else.
Yeah, it should be possible to build an operator or a CRD or something that operates really just like a thin proxy around wadm and wasmCloud, and have wadm do all the work.
Jennifer, do you have a link to that, the wasmCloud Kubernetes operator? I know that kind of inspired some of the stuff here, but I can't seem to locate where it is. Maybe it's in a Red Badger org.
And just paste it in the chat because I set it up just now.
Yeah, looking at this, it definitely looks like this was kind of an initial implementation for what, for a declarative deployment. And what we're settling on with wadm is essentially something like this, but not Kubernetes specific, which I think we've talked about a good bit, but this was good to find again. All right, any more questions on the wadm PR for now? Alrighty, well, I had one more thing that I knew of that I wanted to bring up. We've talked about it in a previous community call, but I know that Matt Wilkinson here, sorry, I feel like I need to sneeze. Matt started working on the wasmCloud.toml RFC and proposed a bunch of different fields that can be in there with the eventual goal of being able to use wash maybe in addition to a make file, like the way that we do things today with make build or make push, make start, and do that partly with wash as well, just to kind of keep everything contained in the same the same toolkit and enable some other scripts. I know that Matt, you kind of you created a new repo a little bit earlier and started working on the format and parsing this. I just wanted to give you some time if you wanted to talk about anything. If you've started here and want to look at some pieces of the code, any status update.
Yeah, sure. I'm just kind of scoping out how exactly I kind of thought it would work. It's a little bit messy right now, to be honest. But the main thing is if you go to the test folder at the top of the repo, and then there's a wasmCloud, that TOML file that I was basically just messing around with. So this is kind of what I was thinking it would look like. If people have any initial comments on this. I also saw that I know for the wadm, the PR that we were looking at earlier, that there was a YAML file in there. So I wasn't totally sure if like, do we have a preference of TOML versus YAML? Should we use one in one scenario and one in the other? Should they be lined up? I wasn't totally sure on that right now.
Yeah, just for clarity, the wadm uses either JSON or YAML, but it's just using YAML by convention because that's what the OAM spec supports for samples.
Okay, sounds good. So should this be a YAML file as well, just to kind of align our formats, or should it remain as a TOML file? It's kind of my question on that, I guess.
Yeah, so
probably has an answer immediately.
I'm sure a lot of people have different opinions on this. I think probably the biggest thing for me is that this serves an entirely different purpose than wadm, so there's really no need to make it look or behave the same way as wadm. That said, as a Rust developer, I prefer the TOML files.
Yeah, I would also throw my towel in there at fear of starting a flame war of that like YAML is being used just because that's what the OAM stuff is written in, and it's just what people are familiar with in that space, and it's more of an application definition than a config file. This is very much a config file, and so TOML is perfect for config in my opinion. It is my personal favorite for config things. But I think what you're doing with the TOML is exactly what we were thinking of doing anyway as we had brainstormed this idea. And so this works just fine in my opinion.
Okay, cool. Sounds good. I'll stick to this then. But yeah, it's not really in a place where we can really test anything yet. I need to keep working on it. Hopefully maybe this week or maybe next week I'll have something more to show.
I like that you started this out though with like a test module with a test config. Always nice to see from the beginning. I did have one thing that I thought I would mention for the TOML. I know that we talk a lot as Rust developers, and wasmCloud has Rust actors, Rust providers, you know, kind of a Rust core. But a lot of the languages that we're going to add aren't going to have Rust config or Rust TOML config files by default. Like I don't think that TOML has any place in like a Node project or like in a Go project or anything. But I would also agree, you know, no matter what we're doing, that especially with this flat kind of TOML structure, it can be really easy to understand if you haven't used it before, and a little more forgiving than like the JSON or YAML. So I would echo the desire to use TOML.
Okay, cool. Sounds good. I'll stick with that then.
All right. Yeah. Thank you, Matt, for doing a little update, and of course, thank you for getting started on this and poking around at what this may look like.
Yeah, no worries. I'll keep you guys updated. Hopefully next week I'll have some more stuff to show.
Awesome. Well, we have a couple of minutes for kind of freeform anything. So if anybody has something they wanted to talk about from the wasmCloud community, broader wasm community, really anything, now is the time. I'll open it up to the floor. All right. Well, if that is it, I won't make everybody sit here in silence. Thank you, everyone, for coming to the community meeting today. Some great discussion and announcements, and looking forward to seeing you next week. I'll stop recording. I'm gonna hang out for a little bit, though. We can always chat. Bye, everyone.